Hi, I'm Josh. I'm from the Travel Bucket List team. Myself and Jamie have been working on this project for the last 3 weeks. And today I'm just going to explain the idea behind the project, what we wanted it to achieve, and the end product, which I believe Jamie is going to go through in a bit more detail. To start with, the idea of a travel bucket list app was off the back of some struggles I've been having recently with trying to keep track of destinations and places all over the world, and they seem to just be spread across different social medias. There's not one place where you can keep or save all this information. So I then decided it would be a good idea to build an app based on searching for points of interest in a specific location and having those displayed and being able to save those for future reference all in one place. Me and Jamie have been working on developing that app and bringing it to life over the last 3 weeks. So the Travel Bucket List app itself is an app that we designed based on a user being able to search for points of interest in a specific destination, and then within that results, the user will be able to save them or dive into those results to get a better description of what they were seeing. The initial idea was to find activities in a certain area, but we couldn't really find a decent API that would help us achieve that. So we just went for points of interest in a destination. That seemed to work well in the final product. So our initial design was using the app I'm on now, which is app.uizard. And this was basically a mock-up of our initial idea and what we wanted the app to look like and feel like for the user. We kept it quite simple in terms of style, just black and white, a bit of color in there, but we wanted it to be easy to use, especially from a user's perspective, just being able to navigate through without any issues. Kept it simple, a nice navigation page, and then an explore page, a profile page, and a favorites page. And in the explore page, we had the idea of a search bar and results, and then you could click into these results and save the results to view later on if you were signed in as a user. If you clicked into that further, you could get a better description of the place you were looking at. You'd have a list of your favorites that you'd saved previously, and then just a mock-up of the profile page there. To split up the work, we decided to use Trello. We found this was a good tool to basically decide on what we'd need in the app, what we should have and what we could have. We didn't use this as much as we should have, but we did speak quite a lot, had a few calls together, and that seemed to work pretty well in terms of getting on with the project and getting to a final product.
Hello everyone, I'm Jamie. I'm going to be talking about the back end, most of the functionality of the site in terms of things going on under the hood. So let's just get into it. My role in the project was handling the back end, as I just said, all the functionality is going on under the website's hood. I'm sure you're familiar with the term backend by now, but we'll just recap what that means for our project. That is secure storage of user data, communicating with the database to fetch saved data from the browser. That's a login. Validating inputs from the app so that they're formatted correctly. Not the most fun part of programming, but it's got to be done. Sending cookies to the browser to keep the users logged in after the page is refreshed. Getting data from external APIs for our search results and images. Using queries from the user. So that's everything I had to do. We're going to look at these problems, just break down how I solved them a bit more in depth now. So initially I had to design the database. You can see here on the right, you've got an entity relationship diagram. And that is just showing the different tables, how they relate to one another within this whole relational database. Because you can see they have certain relationships with one another. In the favorites table, for example, all the information you need about a favorite can be found within the destination ID and within the user ID. And each one is individually identified as favorite ID. But not all of this was included in our MVP in the end. Just because I designed this for an app with pretty much full functionality as we'd initially discussed it. Obviously, that didn't get implemented fully, just got a minimum viable product. The destinations ended up being taken from an external API. And is it for the database design? But in order to implement that, I had to model our entity relationship diagram in a way that I could actually have tables to interact with, to write to, and read from, etc. So I use SQLize as an ORM to do all of that within a Node.js environment, then set up a basic backend server with Express.js, which could do all the CRUD operations, reading, writing, updating, deleting, and it stored the passwords as hash strings with bcrypt.js. So once the backend server was correctly validating all that data we sent to it, that everything was the right format, that meant that we could start sending data and receiving it from the actual front end from a login form. But because the form wasn't actually ready, I had to set up my... So here's some screenshots taken as I was building the functionality. Not the best user interface, but certainly not the worst. At first, it was validating both the username and email, but we changed that to validate just the username because both of them are unique anyway. And keeping the users logged in. So to keep a user logged in after they've entered the correct details, I had to send them a cookie from the server using Express, as we mentioned. Inside the cookie was a signed JSON web token with the user's data, so the browser could securely remember when they're logged in. So the token just certifies to the browser that the user's details were correct, because sometimes the browser forgets. I feel like I'm accepting an Oscar when I say this, but all of this was possible due to the bcrypt.js cookie, JSON web token, and JWT decode libraries. Wouldn't have been able to do it without them. And this is communicating with the external APIs. So the external APIs that we used were firstly OpenTripMap, which was for getting the data about the interesting places you could visit for our search query function. And then we had the web search images, which was for getting images depending on the query. But that was actually implemented to solve a problem, which it says here. And basically the problem was that to get the images to appear on the search results with the exact location, it exceeded our free plan's amounts of requests per second, unless we were going to really limit the amount of search results to like only 2 or 3. So to get around this, we couldn't actually get exact search results with the test. I'm trying to explain it with a user example. So let's say you search London and the shard came up as one of the results. We couldn't configure it so that an exact picture of the shard came out. I had to use the web search image API. The way that was, I'd have to be doing a search for each result, and that meant we could only give 2 results, as I just explained. The web image search API was used to just literally take the user's search, so London in this case, and then add some extra keywords onto that, monument, culture, related talk, travel, whatever, and that could give some pictures of London, which are relevant, but not exactly what we wanted. So next steps for continuing development. As we continue to develop the app, which I will keep developing it for some more functionality, just for my peace of mind more than anything else. So we want to add a few more features to let the user have a play around, like custom lists and favorites. And then another cool feature would be to have a social aspect where a user could see their friends lists, or that you work on a list together with someone else. We would also obviously need to fix the issues that I've just talked about with the external APIs, because it's a little bit unprofessional when the images don't actually match the places. So yes, thank you for listening to my portion of this. I'm going to give it back to Josh now, and he's just going to run you through what we got for our MVP in the end. So yes, thank you.
So now I'm just going to run through what using the app will look like. This isn't the finished product. Me and Jamie are both going to continue to work on this. So there's some things in terms of styling that we're not quite sure on that we need to change. But the functionality is there, and we've got it to a good place in terms of what we want it to do. Now it's just building around that. So we got the explore page. We'll jump into that. Again, kept it simple with the design. And if we search for Venice, it'll pop up there. You'll see we have a list of places. Obviously, the images don't match up at the minute, but we ended up opting for, just for the sake of showing you what it might look like, just using a random image API which Jamie set up over the last couple of days. That's why it's displaying how it is, because we couldn't quite find a decent API in terms of images for these locations, but still works as we want it to. So if you click into the point of interest, you can see we'll get a description and location. And yeah, pretty simple at the minute again, but we're going to work on this and build on it as we go along. So if I was now to show you how to log in as a user, I do currently have an account, but for the sake of this, I'll use the sign up form. Submit that sign in page just to show you've successfully signed in. Again, not styled how we'd want it to, but the functionality is there and it's working as it should. And then if we return to home, you can see we know we're signed in. It's displaying our name up at the top. We can use the app just how I demonstrated before. Exactly the same. Got a simple profile page with a logout button. It needs a bit of work again, but it's all there. The functionality is working as it should. Just the styling. And then favorites page does need a bit of work as well. And that was the last thing on the list to do, but we thought if we could get the main explore page down and working, then we'd be happy. So yeah, that's the app. Hopefully you've enjoyed the presentation.